Hey guys, tonight we slip into chainmail boots, grab a splintered spear, and follow the weary path of a soldier marching through the First Crusade. The year is 1097. You're somewhere in the vast, rocky expanse of Anatolia, where the ground crunches with frost and the horizon looks like it was sketched by someone who gave up halfway through. Your breath fogs the air like dragon smoke, though sadly, there are no dragons, just blisters and the occasional aggressive goose. Your back aches from yesterday's march and you slept poorly again. The ground is frozen, your blanket smells like moldy hay, and someone snored directly into your ear. You don't even remember who. It's too dark to tell, but you hope they don't notice when you accidentally step on their foot while getting up. You roll out of your tent, or more accurately, crawl through the stitched-together flap that counts as shelter. It's still pre-dawn, just the faintest blue-gray glow behind the hills. Someone nearby coughs hard enough to stir a mule, and across the camp, a few others are already preparing to move. Nobody's talking much yet. Too tired, too cold. And let's be honest, nobody really wants to be awake at this hour. Crusading isn't glamorous. It's just glorified, cold camping with extra swords and a higher risk of arrow-related injury. You brush frost off your musty cloak, thinking again about how your cousin back home said this would be a holy adventure. He's probably tending sheep in the Lore Valley right now with warm stew and zero risk of dysentery. Meanwhile, your fingers are stiff, your knees are cracked like dry bread, and you're about to walk again for hours, possibly uphill both ways. Oh, and there's always that whisper of danger. Ambush? Disease? Random bear attack? Welcome to your holy pilgrimage, where every creaky sunrise feels like the start of a very long, very underpaid work shift. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time you're listening in the comments. It's fun seeing who else is unwinding with a little medieval misery. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lace up your boots, if you can call these stiff, leather bundles boots, and grab your spear. It's not exactly a legendary weapon. The tip is a bit crooked, and there's a mysterious stain near the handle. Don't ask. You're not even sure it's yours, but all spears kind of look the same when you're half asleep in the dark. You rub your face with cold fingers, which somehow makes you feel more tired. Someone starts a weak fire in the distance, its thin smoke curling into the morning air like a slow exhale. A knight walks past you, armor jingling like an angry coin purse. He grunts, possibly a greeting or maybe just indigestion. Hard to tell with knights. The command to assemble rings out, loud and unpleasant, like a rooster made of metal. You groan, along with a few dozen others, and shuffle into a loose formation. It's never quite a formation, just a clump of underfed men trying to pretend they know what they're doing. You glance up at the standard flapping limply in the breeze. The red cross stitched to white cloth, the symbol of your mission. Deus Vult. They keep shouting. God wills it. But right now, you think God would probably will you back to bed with a warm oat cake and a dry tunic. You look around. Most of these guys are like you, poor, desperate, and heavily influenced by one too many sermons about sin and salvation. A few knights, a few monks, a lot of peasants. Some are already chewing strips of dried meat. One guy appears to be eating something that might be tree bark. Crusading cuisine is eclectic. Someone slips in the mud. Someone else is readying their belt for the fourth time. And a young squire nearby whispers that he heard a rumor. The Byzantines are going to abandon you. Again, you groan. Historians still argue whether Emperor Alexios ever meant to support you past Nicaea, or whether he was quietly hoping you'd all get lost somewhere and just stop riding home. You march out from camp one slow footstep at a time. The sky lightens, and the air sharpens. You pass some broken carts and a dead mule, an old sight by now, barely worth a second glance. You give the mule a nod of solidarity. You get it, buddy. Your stomach grumbles. You ignore it. There's no breakfast stop on the First Crusade. Just more walking, more dirt, and maybe, some lentils tonight if you don't have to trade your boots for them. You pass a group of barefoot pilgrims trailing behind the column. They sing softly. One of them is holding a chicken like it's a holy relic. Maybe it is. Maybe it's dinner. Who knows anymore? Your captain barks orders ahead. You squint at the path winding up ahead. A narrow trail carved through the hills, with rocks that hate your ankles and bushes that snag your sleeves. You'll follow it until sunset, unless someone gets lost. Again, which has happened. Twice. You mutter a prayer under your breath. Not for victory, but for warmer socks. The saints might laugh, but you're serious. You trade a few indulgences for a dry pair of socks and a spoon that doesn't splinter in your mouth. As the sun finally climbs over the hilltops, casting pale gold across the frosty trail, you sigh. Another day of trudging toward something. Some city, some battlefield, some legend you barely understand. All you know is that Jerusalem is still hundreds of miles away, and today, like yesterday, is just one more slow step toward glory, or more likely gastrointestinal distress. Still, you keep walking, because somehow, some part of you believes it'll all mean something in the end. The sun has officially shown up, though frankly, it's just for show. It glints off your chainmail like someone's trying to blind you with holy light, but you still can't feel your fingers. Morning warmth is a myth, like dragons, clean latrines, or quick marches. You stop with the others along a narrow ridge trail while the leaders argue, again, about direction. The same three nobles stand in a semicircle like they're auditioning for a play called Who's in Charge? The answer is no one, or everyone, which feels the same most days. You shift your weight while they bicker. Left foot, right foot, back to left. Your knees creak like an old mill. Time to gear up. First, your mail hauberk, a tangled, heavy net of iron links that pinches skin and makes you smell like wet pennies. Lifting it over your head is a two-man job, but no one's helping today, so you grunt your way through it solo. The cold iron slaps your back, and you inhale sharply. Congratulations. You are now officially armored, sore, and 10% shorter. Next comes the belt. Always too tight. You lost weight weeks ago, either from the walking or the stew that tried to kill you. But the belt stays tight because who has time to repunch holes? Not you. The sword hangs awkwardly at your hip. It's not even your sword. You borrowed it, or found it, or acquired it in a mutually ambiguous moment near Tarsus. Breakfast? Let's not get carried away. You dig into your satchel and pull out two items. A strip of meat so dry it might qualify as wood, and a heel of bread that's roughly the shape and density of a brick. You chew the meat. It fights back. You chew harder. Eventually, you win. Barely. Beside you, a Flemish soldier, short, wiry, suspiciously hairy, snorts at your chewing. That's not meat, he says in thick, broken Latin. That's horse. Or mule. Hard to say. You nod solemnly, mid-chew. Still better than that fish from last week. He chuckles and coughs. You both cough. The entire camp coughs. Everyone always sounds like they're one lung away from death. And to be fair, some of them are. You think today we fight? He asks, squinting down the road. You shrug. I think today we walk, argue, walk more, and then dig a latrine. He laughs again and wipes his nose on his sleeve. Crusade hygiene at its finest. You glance down the line. Armor clinks and clatters as others suit up. Some wear quilted gambesons, thick padded jackets soaked in sweat, rain, and despair. Others wear mismatched pieces, half-mail, scraps of boiled leather, or even just thick tunics with crude crosses painted in mud. One guy you've seen before wears chainmail and a fur cloak, which feels like cheating. He claims it's from a bear he killed. More likely it was a rug. Further up the line, a knight's squire struggles to buckle his master's greaves. The knight scolds him in French. The squire pretends not to understand. You smirk. It's a daily ritual, armor wrestling, and muttered threats. One of the few things that feel consistent. A trumpet sounds. Not the majestic, cinematic kind. More like a loud horn burp. Still, it means movement. You rise, shoulders heavy, body stiff. Time to shuffle on. The line begins to move. A jumbled snake of men, horses, carts, and dust. You trudge forward, boots sticking to the muddy path. The Flemish guy walks beside you, humming something that might be a hymn, or maybe just the sound of mental unraveling. Someone behind you complains about his helmet strap. Someone ahead farts. Loudly. You'd like to say that's unusual. It isn't. As you march, you think about your hometown, whatever little village or crumbling stone keep you left behind. You wonder what your brother's doing. Whether your dog still sleeps under the stairs. Whether anyone even remembers you left. There's something about marching that pulls your mind backward. The rhythm, the monotony. It opens the trapdoor to homesickness and regret. But you press on because stopping means being trampled. Or yelled at. Or both. To your left, a group of foot soldiers chant prayers. They're led by a monk with wild eyes and a cross bigger than his torso. He swings it like a mace. His chants grow louder. Someone joins in. Then two more. Soon half the road echoes with Pater Noster. As if sheer volume can ward off ambushes. Maybe it can. Maybe not. Historians still argue whether religious fervor truly united the Crusaders, or if everyone was just too scared to admit they were following bad directions into hostile terrain. Either way, the prayers continue. You pass a cart stuck in the mud. The driver curses in Greek. One of the wheels is cracked. Two oxen droop under the yoke, looking like they've made some life-altering mistakes. A knight dismounts to help. His armor immediately sinks into the mud. He swears, tries to pretend he meant to kneel, and then gives up. You veer around them. This is how delays happen. Crusades aren't battles. They're long, slow traffic jams with occasional sword fights. Around midday, the road narrows. You squeeze between thorn bushes and sharp stones. Your armor scrapes branches. Something snags your cloak. You keep walking. Behind you, someone trips. There's swearing. Again. You check the sun. Still climbing. You sigh. You wish it would set already, even though you'll miss it once it's gone. Daytime is tiring. Nighttime is terrifying. Those are your options. Your feet ache. You feel a blister forming. Again. You're starting to think your boots are actually working against you. Like maybe the guy who sold them was a Saracen spy. That would explain a lot. You glance at the Flemish guy. He's humming again. Now it's definitely not a hymn. You catch a few words. Something about turnips and love. You decide not to ask. The line stops again. A minor hill blocks the path. It's not even that steep, but apparently, it's enough to spark another strategy debate among the nobles. You wait. You lean on your spear. You consider sitting, then decide against it. You'll never get back up. A whisper goes around the line. Ambush ahead. You stiffen. Everyone does. You grip your weapon tighter. Is this it? Is this the fight? 5 tense minutes pass. Then 10. Turns out it was just goats. Wild ones. Very loud goats, granted, but still. You exhale. The moment passes. The march continues. By late afternoon, your shoulders sag. Your breath hitches. Your stomach growls. But still, you walk. Because on this crusade, it's walk or be left behind. And no one wants to be left behind. The sun starts to lower behind the hills now, dipping the whole trail into a sullen, golden haze. You've been marching all day again, and the novelty of gods will wore off somewhere between your third blister and your second time slipping in donkey dung. The line of Crusaders snakes endlessly ahead and behind you, a wobbly thread of sweat, steel, and occasional complaining. Your feet throb, not ache throb. Each step feels like a passive-aggressive punch from your own body. You've tried shifting your weight, walking on your toes, walking on your heels, walking with a limp just to mix things up. But the pain always returns, like an unwanted song stuck in your head. This is what crusading really looks like. Not glorious charges or radiant saints handing you magical swords. No, just trudging through ankle-deep muck behind a guy who's humming off-key and smells like smoked cheese. It's dodging droppings and arguing over which pile of rocks is supposed to be Edessa. The cry goes up, Deus vult. God wills it. You repeat it, though your tone lacks enthusiasm. You're not entirely sure what he wills today, but it probably involves more hills. As you round a bend, you catch sight of the banner again. The red cross snapping in the wind atop a wooden pole, held by a scrawny teenager in a helmet that keeps slipping over his eyes. He's too young to fight, too old to stay home. You don't even know his name, but you've followed that banner like it's a lighthouse in a fog of nonsense. You cough. Dust and fatigue clog your throat. You pass another soldier gagging on the same air. He mutters something about turning back and finding a monastery. Honestly, not the worst idea. Monasteries have bread, and walls, and probably fewer rats. But you can't turn back. Not now. You left too much behind, your tools, your tiny plot of land, your only decent tunic. You told everyone in the village you were doing this for glory. And God. But let's be real, it was mostly the glory. Now you'd settle for dry socks and a cheese wheel. The road rises again. Your legs scream in protest. You press on. You start noticing others slowing down too. Even the knights, those heavy clunkers in their plate and pride, are dragging a bit. One tries to spur his horse forward, but the beast just gives him a tired look and stops to urinate mid-trail. The knight sighs like a man who has truly lost control of his life. Then, just as the sun dips behind a ridge, you hear shouting. Everyone freezes. Your fingers tighten around your spear. Is it an ambush? Raiders? A wild pig again? Nope, just an argument up ahead. Two captains, Frankish and Norman, screaming at each other in bad Latin. One's holding a map upside down. The other's pointing at the sun like it's going to explain anything. The shouting gets louder, then quieter, then louder again. It's unclear if they've agreed to march east, or if one of them just challenged the sun to a duel. You sit on a rock while they sort it out. The rock is wet. You stand up again. Your Flemish companion plops down beside you and pulls off his left boot. Steam rises. You look away. Blister big as walnut, he says proudly. Might give it a name. You nod slowly. Name it after one of the saints. Keep it holy. He grins. Saint Pustulus. You both chuckle quietly. Humor is about the only thing still functioning out here. Eventually, the decision is made, turn north for a while, then curve back east, then maybe find a place to set up camp. Maybe, unless they argue again. The line begins to move. You rise, groaning. Your knees sound like someone stepping on brittle twigs. You fall into step behind the banner again, still pretending this is organized movement and not a long, clumsy drift toward exhaustion. You pass by a group of pilgrims praying aloud, reciting psalms. They walk barefoot by choice. Their feet are cracked, red, and raw. One of them stumbles and another helps her up. No one says a word. They just keep chanting. Historians still argue whether these barefoot penitents slowed down the army or served as a kind of spiritual engine, fueling morale, reminding everyone this wasn't just conquest, but redemption. You're undecided. They're sincere, yes, but they also keep blocking the trail. Your mind drifts again. Back home, spring would be arriving. The orchard might be blooming. You picture your mother stirring a pot of something bland but warm. She never wanted you to go. She cried when you left. You said something about serving Christendom. It sounded noble at the time. Now it just sounds far away. The sun finally disappears. Dusk settles in like a blanket that's mostly thorns. A trumpet bleats, again, and the line halts. You hear men shouting up ahead. Camp? Camp. Finally, you shuffle toward a flattened patch of field and drop your bag. A few soldiers around you do the same. A man collapses face first into his blanket and doesn't move. Another is already boiling something in a dented tin pot. You start setting up. Tent first, if you can call it a tent. It's really just a piece of wool cloth on sticks. But it blocks the wind most of the time and it keeps spiders out some of the time. You tie it down, struggling with stiff fingers, and mutter curses at the knots like it's their fault. The Flemish guy has found firewood. Where? No idea. He always finds firewood. Some kind of sixth sense. He hands you a piece. You grunt thanks. You light a tiny fire and sit beside it. Warmth creeps into your knees. The smell of wood smoke, sweat, and overcooked turnips fills the air. Someone's playing a lute off in the distance. Badly. But hey, it's something. You chew another chunk of mystery meat, wash it down with lukewarm water, and stretch your legs. You made it through another day. Barely. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. You wake to shouting. Not the urgent kind, more like the grumpy, pre-coffee sort. Still, it jolts you upright with that familiar surge of panic that says, ambush? but quickly fizzles into nope, just mourning. Again, your back is a knot of regret. Your legs have somehow aged 40 years overnight. And your breath? Let's just say if it could kill a Saracen, you wouldn't even need a sword. You crawl out of your tent to find your Flemish neighbor trying to fry something questionable over the fire. It smells like sadness and onions. You wave off the offer. Too early for that much risk. This is what they don't put in the stories. The awkward mornings, the mild food poisoning, and the endless parade of relics for sale like some weird medieval yard sale. A monk passes by holding what he claims is a vial of the Virgin Mary's milk. Someone else has a feather from the Archangel Michael. You don't ask where it came from. The same guy swore last week that he had John the Baptist's molar. That's at least 3 molars by now. Someone's either lying or the saints had really weird dental anatomy. You glance around the camp. Everywhere you look, little altars have popped up. Stones stacked into crude crosses, bones wrapped in silk, even one guy praying over a petrified frog. He swears it's blessed. You nod politely and walk away. Relics are currency now, holy souvenirs traded and bragged about like Pokemon cards of salvation. One man claims his scrap of wood is from the true cross. Another swears his pendant holds a drop of Christ's blood. You don't have the heart to tell him it looks suspiciously like wine. Historians still argue whether these relics genuinely inspired morale or simply served as medieval placebo, a way to feel closer to divine protection in a world where medicine involved leeches and blessings required cash. Speaking of blessings, you see Father Guillaume, the Crusade's spiritual leader, standing on a crate. His robes are mud-streaked, his voice gravelly from too many sermons, and he's holding a crucifix like a sword. He's preaching again, warning everyone that victory requires not just strength, but purity. You must cast out sin, he declares, or God shall cast you into the fire. You glance at the Flemish guy. He scratches his armpit and shrugs. Purity's hard to prioritize when you've been wearing the same socks for 4 months. You find a spot on the edge of camp to relieve yourself. There are no latrines, not really. Just designated holes, or sometimes not even that. You step carefully. You've learned this the hard way. Back at camp, a small crowd has gathered around a self-proclaimed visionary. She's a ragged woman with sharp eyes and a louder voice than seems physically possible. She claims to have seen St. Peter walking through the sky last night. He had wings of fire and eyes of sapphire, she says. And he spoke of a coming victory. You squint at the sky. It's empty, as always. Still, people nod. Some cross themselves. Others drop coins at her feet. You're not sure if she's truly inspired or just very good at improvisation. Maybe both. That's the thing about the First Crusade, it's not just a military campaign. It's a traveling circus of faith, fear, and confusion. A lot of confusion. One knight near the fire boasts loudly about the relic he carries. A saint's toe bone, encased in silver. He waves it around like it's going to deflect arrows. You smile politely, then remember this is the same man who once tried to bless a chicken before eating it. You sit on a rock and look out over the hills. They're quiet, greenish-gray, speckled with stones that might be graves or just very uncooperative sheep. It's beautiful in a rugged, desolate sort of way. If you weren't exhausted and surrounded by weaponized piety, you might enjoy it. Instead, you tie your boot again, 3rd time today, and glance at the road ahead. The caravan will move soon. Supplies are low. Spirits are strange. Everyone's balancing on the line between holiness and hunger. A rider approaches, one of the scouts. His horse is foaming at the mouth, and his eyes are wide with something that could be terror or just extreme irritation. He reports enemy movement ahead. Lightly armed. Maybe merchants, maybe more dangerous. That's when the question always arises. Fight? Negotiate? Or just avoid? Your commander. A thick-necked Frenchman with a voice like thunder and a temper like fire votes fight. He always does. But your group's priest, a softer man with hands too clean for this work, argues that a parley might be wiser. The result? A reconnaissance, which usually means send a few unlucky soldiers ahead and see what happens. Guess who gets picked? Yes, you. And 3 others, including your Flemish friend who mutters, "At least we'll get some air." You saddle up, well, technically you climb on the world's most passive-aggressive mule, and set off down the ridge trail. As you descend, you catch sight of smoke on the horizon. Not war smoke, cooking smoke, a small encampment of tents. You approach cautiously, weapons down, eyes up. It's a merchant caravan, Armenian by the look of their dress. Traders from the east, probably moving goods between Constantinople and Antioch. They eye you warily but don't run. Your leader dismounts and greets them in a strange, halting mix of Latin and hand gestures. To your surprise, one of them responds in passable French. His name is Taran. He's been following the Crusaders for weeks, selling supplies, gossip, and occasionally relics. Fake, he admits, but tastefully fake. You trade. They offer dried fruits, cloth, a few curved knives. You give them coins, a few lengths of mail, and, somewhat controversially, a copy of St. Augustine's sermons. It was already missing several pages and smelled like fish. One of your group asks if they've seen enemies nearby. Taran shakes his head. Just rumors. Bandits. Bad ones. Or ghosts, some say. Ghosts. You all laugh. Quietly. On the way back to camp, you consider that. Not the ghosts, but the way fear twists everything. A merchant becomes a threat. A relic becomes a shield. A frog becomes a sign from God. The line between faith and fever dreams is very, very thin out here. As the camp reappears on the ridge, you're grateful. You made it back. Not much changed. You're still tired, still sore, still skeptical. But you're also still moving. And in the First Crusade, that counts as a win. By now, you've accepted that time is meaningless on the road. It's either before the sun burns your scalp or after it sinks and everything starts biting you. The march resumes after the relic hawkers and false prophets take a break from scamming the desperate. And once again, your feet are locked into the rhythm of trudging, dragging, and occasionally stumbling with dramatic flair. Midday heat presses in like a damp wool cloak, and your chainmail heats up so much you're convinced you could fry an egg on your shoulder. A terrible idea, but you can't stop thinking about it. A warm egg, real food. Your group moves cautiously now. Word of bandits, possibly Turkish horsemen, has spread like lice, which, by the way, are also spreading. You scratch your neck absent-mindedly, wondering if the itch is a spiritual test or just another uninvited medieval pet. Probably the latter. Then, without warning, a shout erupts from the front ranks. You snap alert. The Flemish guy yelps. A scout gallops back, waving his arms. Enemy movement. To the west, he cries. The column scatters into action with the grace of a panicked goose herd. Men grab spears, shields, prayer beads, sometimes all three. You fumble with your helmet, wedge it down, and grip your spear with both hands, the wood warm and slick with sweat. You duck into the ditch beside the trail as the knights organize a loose line. Dust rises. You hear hoofbeats. Are they charging, circling, or just passing through? And then a figure appears. Not dozens. Just one. He's on horseback and he's not charging. Instead, he's staring, watching, dressed in flowing silks, curved sword at his side. A Seljuk scout, maybe, a test balloon. He doesn't raise his weapon, just nods once, and then wheels away, disappearing over the ridge like a desert ghost. Silence falls. No attack. Not today. You exhale, finally, like you've been holding your lungs hostage. Your companions do the same. A knight curses and spits. The air still thrums with tension, like a lute string just plucked. The Crusaders regroup. The captains argue again. Some want to give chase, others advise caution. You know how this ends. No one agrees and you walk more. Sure enough, the line reforms. No pursuit, just vigilance. The column crawls forward again, slower now, with nervous glances toward every ridge and bush. You resume your position near the middle. Safer, less heroic, but you've learned that survival often involves knowing where not to be. It's past noon when things actually get interesting. The sound comes first, thwip, then a yelp, then chaos. An arrow has struck someone near the front. Probably not fatal, it lodged in a thigh, but it's enough. The line breaks into a scramble. Men duck, some draw weapons. Someone shouts, They're in the trees. Someone else contradicts. No, it came from the rocks. Confusion rules. Your group splits instinctively into two clusters circling shields. Arrows fall 3, maybe 4. Not a full ambush. More like harassment. You crouch low, shield raised, waiting. You can hear your own heartbeat louder than anything else. It hammers against your ribs like it's trying to escape. And then, as quickly as it began, it's over. No attackers appear. No charge follows. The enemy is gone. Whoever they were, they weren't here to fight. Just remind you that they could. You check yourself, no injuries. Just a nick on your boot. You glance at your Flemish friend. He's fine too, though his helmet is slightly dented and now looks like a lopsided pot. Everyone's rattled. There's muttering, some shouting, some prayer. One knight insists they must purify the road. Another wants revenge. The commanders finally settle on a compromise. Do nothing but walk faster. Classic. As you march again, you pass the wounded man. A boy, really, barely 16. He's pale, gripping his thigh, blood soaking the hem of his tunic. A priest hovers nearby, murmuring Latin and pressing a crude bandage. You pause for a second. The boy looks up at you. His lips form a word you can't hear. You nod, awkwardly, then move on. Because you have to. You fall back into line and try to shake off the tension. But your hands are still trembling. You weren't even hit, but your body's acting like it was. That's the worst part. The almost. There's something uniquely exhausting about panic with no release. About being ready to fight, to die, and then nothing. Just marching. Again. The rest of the afternoon passes in silence. Even the chatter has faded. Everyone's conserving energy or nursing thoughts they don't want to say aloud. Eventually, someone dares to break the silence. Do you think God was testing us? A young man asks. You don't answer. Not because you're rude, but because you genuinely don't know. Historians still debate whether the Crusaders believed every skirmish was a divine exam, or whether they simply hoped that if they kept saying God wills it, the chaos would make sense eventually. You think about your family, your village priest, the sermons, the promises, paradise for martyrs, glory for survivors. But this doesn't feel like glory. It feels like barely not dying. Late afternoon now. The shadows stretch across the road like they're trying to trip you. You pass an old stone milestone, Roman maybe, worn smooth, covered in moss. Someone spits on it. Another kneels to pray. You just keep walking. A tree line appears ahead, rare, thick with shade. The leaders declare it a rest point. Not camp, just a pause. You sink onto the grass and drink what's left in your water skin. Tastes like iron and goat. Nearby, your Flemish friend pulls out a tiny wooden icon. He stares at it, then tucks it away. You think this gets easier? He asks. You shrug. Only if your expectations get lower. He laughs softly. Then I'm already halfway there. You sit quietly together for a moment, watching the shadows drift, listening to nothing but wind, birds, and your own aching body. Eventually, the call comes. Time to move again. You stand, slowly, stiffly, and you keep going, because that's the only thing left to do. Camp tonight is nothing special. Just a clearing between some dry shrubs and a rocky hill shaped vaguely like an angry loaf of bread. But you've learned not to be picky. If it's flat, not crawling with snakes, and has even the suggestion of a breeze, it's luxury. You stake your tent in record time, the motion's automatic now. Drive the peg, tighten the rope, mutter your usual complaint about the knots, repeat. Your body groans the whole way through, but there's a certain peace in the routine. You know this pain. You understand it. It's the pain of surviving, of still being here. A fire crackles nearby, and the flicker of light against the tents makes everything feel a little less grim. You're surrounded by dozens of men, yet it still feels lonely. Maybe that's just what crusading does. Crowds outside, silence inside. You pull out a scrap of bread that could be used as a weapon and gnaw thoughtfully while staring at the fire. A young monk is reciting something in Latin nearby. It sounds important, but your brain is too fried to care. You're more interested in the merchant from Constantinople who just arrived in camp with a donkey cart full of essentials. He's peddling wine, spiced nuts, old books, and what he calls miracle ointments. You're not sure what's in them, but they smell like licorice and crushed grass, and you just saw someone rub one into their forehead and then immediately fall asleep. Could be healing magic. Could be mold. Hard to say. You browse his wares, if only to break up the monotony of dried lentils and half-rusted tent hooks. He offers you a tiny vial of something he claims is blessed oil from a Byzantine monastery. You ask him how he knows. He winks and says, "Because I blessed it myself." You admire the honesty and move on. That's when you hear the gossip. Apparently, one of the monks in the far tent has been writing everything down. Conversations, dreams, relic trades, even that unfortunate incident with the overcooked pigeon. Some say he's writing a holy chronicle. Others say he's planning a novel. You just hope he leaves out the part where you tripped into a latrine pit last week. That same night, you're invited to sit near the commander's circle. Well, not in the circle, but just close enough to overhear. They're discussing alliances. Specifically, the Byzantine guides that were supposed to help you navigate this region. No one's seen them for 2 days. Some whisper betrayal. Others think they just got bored and left. Historians still argue whether the Byzantines ever intended to shepherd the Crusaders all the way east, or if Emperor Alexios quietly decided you were better as a distraction for his enemies than as houseguests. Either way, you're officially mapless again. A Greek merchant sitting nearby offers you his opinion. He leans in, smiles, and in fluent Latin says, "You're all mad." You raise an eyebrow. "Marching to Jerusalem," he continues, "through lands you've never seen, with leaders who hate each other, all while pretending you're doing it for God, when most of you just want land or forgiveness." He's not wrong, but you don't say that out loud. He offers you a piece of dried figure. You accept it because moral ambiguity always goes down easier with sugar. As the fire burns lower, someone starts humming an old song. Others join in. It's not Latin. It's not a hymn. It's just a folk tune from somewhere north, about a girl and a goose and something involving wine barrels. You don't understand all the words, but the melody wraps around you like a warm blanket anyway. Later, as you lie in your tent staring at the canvas ceiling, you hear whispered conversations all around. One voice talks of a dream, St. George appearing in the sky. Another says he saw a serpent with golden eyes in the stream. And another, barely audible, claims he's done. That he'll desert tomorrow. That he'd rather take his chances with the wild than keep following these ghost trails eastward. You don't blame him. You've thought about it too. What would it be like to slip away one night? To walk west instead of east? Back toward the sea, toward home, toward anything but this grinding, endless forward motion. But you don't move, because you know desertion isn't freedom, it's just dying in a different place. So you stay. In the morning, camp breaks early. Everyone's jumpy again. The rumor mill is working overtime. Someone says the enemy is shadowing you. Someone else says they've set traps along the road. One particularly creative soul swears the Turks are using invisible arrows, which you assume just means bad aim. The road ahead leads toward a small village you've never heard of and probably won't remember. The scouts say it's abandoned. Of course, they also said the last village was mostly safe, and you found it full of bees and angry geese. You march anyway. A new face joins your unit, a scribe from Normandy. He's pale, skittish, and wearing shoes too nice for marching. His first question is, "Where are the relics kept?" Your Flemish friend tells him, "In the back, near the guy who snores like a dying ox." The scribe nods solemnly, doesn't realize it's a joke. Later that day, a bishop arrives on horseback, flanked by 2 guards. He delivers a sermon under a crooked tree, shouting that the Lord tests the faithful with fire, famine, and fatigue. You mentally add "and bad boots" to that list. He blesses everyone. Someone faints. Someone else shouts "Amen," with the enthusiasm of a man who just saw a cheese wheel. You keep walking. By sunset, the road levels out and the village appears. Crumbling stone walls, empty homes, no people. Just the sound of wind and the distant flutter of crows. You enter cautiously. No resistance. No signs of life. You set up camp inside the ruins, under the shell of what might have once been a chapel. A broken cross lies on the ground. The scribe kneels beside it, whispering something. You wonder if it's a prayer or a complaint about dust. Night falls again. You sleep under what used to be a roof, staring at stars through the gaps. And despite everything, you feel oddly safe. For tonight, the morning sun filters in through the collapsed beams of the ruined chapel, painting slanted light across your face and jolting you awake before your body is ready. You groan, sit up, and realize your neck has somehow discovered 3 new ways to ache. The ground was uneven, your blanket was too short, and something small but determinately alive was crawling on your leg all night. Just another day in the First Crusade. As you stretch and shake the numbness from your arms, one of the younger squires runs up to you with a dusty envelope in his hand. He looks far too excited for someone who's probably been up since dawn shoveling manure. "Letter," he says. "It's for you." Your first instinct is disbelief. A letter? Here? That's like someone handing you a pumpkin spice latte in the middle of a battlefield. But the handwriting is unmistakable. Slanted, careful, and unmistakably from your sister back home. You stare at it for a moment before daring to open it. The parchment is creased and weathered from months of travel. Bits of dirt cling to the corners. But somehow it still smells faintly of lavender and hearth smoke. You take a deep breath and begin to read. She asks how you are, then immediately says she knows you won't answer. She tells you the goats are fine, the church roof finally collapsed, and the neighbor's son fell into the well again. Twice. She includes a sketch of a chicken wearing your old helmet. You laugh out loud. People look over, startled. You don't care. She talks about how the bishop keeps giving fiery sermons about the crusade, though he's never left the village himself. How everyone lights candles for the pilgrims and whispers prayers that their sons and brothers aren't dead. Or worse, forgotten. You don't realize you're crying until the ink smudges beneath your fingers. The letter doesn't mention your mother. You're not sure if that means she's well, or if your sister just couldn't bring herself to write it. That night, you read the letter again 3 times. You memorized the folds and stains and even the accidental ink blot where she probably sneezed mid-sentence. It becomes your most treasured possession, more precious than your dagger, your coin pouch, or even that weird relic shard someone swore was a saint's toenail. You tuck it inside your tunic like armor for the soul. Later that week, the army slows, not because of enemy resistance, because of a funeral. A knight from northern France, someone vaguely important, died from a stomach wound after a skirmish near a stream. The camp halts. The makeshift chapel in the ruined village becomes a tomb. You're asked to help dig the grave. As you shovel alongside other tired men, the dirt clumps heavily, as if reluctant to be disturbed. You say nothing, but each shovelful makes you feel more mortal. If he can die from a simple cut, so can you. So can anyone. One of the monks recites Psalm 23 in Latin. You only catch fragments. Valley of the shadow of death, thy rod and thy staff. You wonder if the dead knight felt any of that comfort in his last moments, or if he simply coughed, cursed, and slipped away like so many others. Historians still argue whether most soldiers in the First Crusade genuinely believed in spiritual glory or were just swept along by peer pressure, debt, and political noise. All you know is, glory feels pretty far away when you're ankle-deep in dirt and grief. After the burial, a silence settles over the camp. A soft kind, not fearful, just exhausted. People sharpen blades or patch gear in near-total quiet. Even the normally loud Flemish guy who sings bawdy songs while repairing his sandals just hums to himself today. Then something strange happens. A bard appears. No, really. A traveling performer with a harp strapped to his back and a crooked smile that says he's seen 1,000 camps like this and probably left most of them under mysterious circumstances. He says he's from Provence, speaks with a drawl, and swears his songs can scare rats and soothe babies. Nobody believes him, but someone tosses him a hunk of bread anyway. He tunes the harp slowly, plucks a few strings, and then begins a song so soft it sounds like memory itself. The tune tells of an older crusade, long before this one. of pilgrims who made it all the way to the Holy Sepulchre only to be turned away because they forgot the local customs, of a knight who fought in the name of love and accidentally married 3 different princesses. You're pretty sure he's making it up, but no one cares. His voice is low, soothing, and his hands move with the grace of someone who knows this is all that stands between him and being eaten by boredom or wolves. The fire flickers, shadows stretch, and for the first time in a while you feel your mind drift, back to your home, to your sister's letter, to the apple orchard you used to sneak into, to the way bread used to taste before it came with splinters. You think about the river behind your house, where you once lost a shoe chasing a frog. You think about your mother's soup and the way she used to hum off-key while stirring it. You think about the sky, how it looked when you first left, when you stood on the edge of the harbor and watched the ship bob gently in the wind, not knowing if you'd ever come back. The bard finishes his song. No one claps. It doesn't feel like a clapping kind of night, but someone hands him another piece of bread. And you, surprisingly, feel lighter. The next morning, the army begins moving again. The ruined village fades behind you like a dream. The bard stays with the column, at least for now. He says he wants to see the desert. You suspect he just wants more free bread. The road ahead climbs into rougher terrain. Fewer trees, more sun. The dust clings to everything, like the memory of something lost. You find yourself humming the bard's tune under your breath. Not because it's catchy, because it reminds you of home. Your boots are starting to fuse with your feet. Not metaphorically, like actually. It's hard to tell where leather ends and blistered skin begins. You've been walking for what feels like 3 days straight, and the road ahead stretches on like the world's worst promise. The command is to push deeper into unfamiliar territory, likely Syria, though maps at this point are less geographic aid and more suggestion with optimism. Someone up ahead swears we're going in circles. Another insists this is definitely the right road, because he remembers that cactus from 2 days ago. Meanwhile, a knight from Lombardy has spent the last hour trying to convince a very confused Armenian farmer to trade onions for a pair of holy gloves that are, objectively, just crusty. You rub your temples. The sun is too high, the wind is too low, and your stomach has declared full rebellion. Your unit pauses at a small river, a pathetic trickle cutting through rocks and brambles. Everyone lunges for it like it's the last drink before eternity. You crouch, cupping muddy water into your mouth, pretending it tastes less like goat hoof than it does. While your hands splash water on your face, you catch something shiny in the bushes. You blink. Is that a coin? Nope, just a button from someone else's long-rotted tunic. You try not to think about where the rest of them went. Historians still argue whether the Crusaders had a reliable sense of direction through these parts or if most of it was just intuition, dumb luck, and following the largest cloud of dust. Given the general vibe today, you're voting for chaos. As the column reforms, a nobleman with far too much feather in his hat points ahead and declares they'll reach Antioch soon. You've heard that word before. It's like, tomorrow, eternally 1 day away. A knight riding a mule trots past you with unusual excitement. He claims he saw a unicorn in the hills. Yes, a unicorn. White, majestic, and silently judging. He swears it was real. You raise an eyebrow. Someone else nearby snorts. The unicorn spotter glares. It was a sign, he insists. A holy omen. You're not sure what's more worrying, that he believes it or that 3 others nod in agreement. Crusade logic. If you see something strange, it's divine. If it smells bad, it's demonic. If it bites you, it's probably just local wildlife. Later, as the heat peaks and your armor bakes your ribs like a medieval air fryer, you find a rare patch of shade under a gnarled fig tree. You drop your gear with a sigh that feels older than you are and sit beside a fellow footman who's trying to write poetry in the dirt with a stick. He's from Burgundy, speaks 5 languages, refuses to eat anything that isn't dried fish. He's writing a poem about Jerusalem or maybe about his feet, it's hard to tell. The verses rhyme glory with gory, which feels uncomfortably accurate. He asks if you think the journey is worth it. You shrug. He sighs. At least we'll be remembered. You think about that for a moment. Will you? More than half the men who started with you are already gone. Some from wounds, others from disease, and more than a few simply vanished, deserted, dead, or worse. Their names are already fading from memory, replaced by the endless drone of marching and commands barked in Latin. Still, you nod. Not because you believe it, but because sometimes people just need a nod to keep going. That night, you sleep under the stars. The sky out here feels impossibly huge. You count constellations you half remember from childhood, drawing imaginary swords and ships between them. You wonder if the same stars watch your sister as she stirs her soup and curses the goat for eating her sandals again. In the distance, wolves howl. You pull your blanket tighter. Come morning, everything is covered in dew, and a surprising amount of beetles. You flick 3 off your blanket before realizing one is just pretending to be dead. Bold move, beetle. You respect it. The army moves again. A few miles in, you pass a crumbling tower. Nobody knows what it once was. Some say it marked a Roman road. Others claim it was a pagan watchpost. One guy swears it's cursed because his cousin stubbed his toe near it and then died of unrelated causes. You start to notice changes in the landscape. Fewer trees, more dust. The hills are sharper, rockier. The colors shift subtly from green-brown to more of a sun-bleached yellow. Your lips chap faster, your water runs lower, and every breeze carries a hint of fine sand. Your unit is assigned rear guard today. That means slower pace, more dust, and a higher chance of being attacked by something with pointy weapons. You keep your head down, trying to conserve energy, as your commander shouts at someone for walking too close to the livestock. Halfway through the day, a cart breaks an axle. You're voluntold to help fix it. While someone argues over wedge sizes and prayers to Saint Eligius, you notice something curious scrawled in the wood. Marcus was here. 1096. God willing. You stare at it longer than you should. Marcus is gone. Probably long gone. But here he was, just like you. You scratch your own name under his. It's not much, but it's something. That night, the group camps on a ridge with a sweeping view of the valley. Fires flicker like stars fallen to earth. The smell of scorched meat wafts through the air, accompanied by someone's off-key rendition of a hymn. The bard is still here, tuning his harp. You wonder if he saw the unicorn, too. Your body wakes up before your mind does. One moment you're nestled against a pack of cloaks that somehow feel like stone, and the next your muscles are screaming, "Please, never do that again." The chill of the ridge still clings to your bones, despite the fact that the sun is already creeping over the hills, threatening to roast you alive by mid-morning. Breakfast is stale bread and a single olive, which might be more pit than food. You chew it anyway, like it owes you money. You do unspeakable things for an egg right now. Even a suspicious egg. Maybe especially a suspicious egg. As the camp stirs, you notice a small group gathered near the edge of the ridge, staring into the distance. You shuffle closer, squinting. There it is. Antioch, or what's left of it. The walled city glows faintly in the haze, its towers leaning at impossible angles, like they're either praying or surrendering. From here, it looks grand, mysterious, ancient. But you know better. You've heard the stories. It's a fortress, a trap, a grave. Antioch has been held by the Seljuk Turks for decades now, and they're not exactly the neighborly type. The rumors say it's packed with supplies, but also soldiers who can shoot the wings off flies, and scorpions the size of your hand, and maybe ghosts. You've stopped separating fact from legend at this point. Everything feels possible. Historians still debate how much the Crusaders truly understood about what they were walking into at Antioch. Some argue they were strategically prepared. Others say they were wildly naive, driven by hope and sunstroke. Watching the men around you, nervous, hopeful, and completely out of clean socks, you're leaning toward the latter. The city's outer wall stretches for miles. A beast made of stone, daring you to try something stupid. And, of course, someone does. By mid-afternoon, scouts report a possible weak point near the dog gate. Yes, it's actually called that, and a plan is formed. You're not invited to the planning meeting because why would they trust the guys doing the actual fighting? Your orders: build more siege towers. You blink. Towers? Here? Out of what? Someone hands you a dull axe and points to the scraggly trees on the nearby slope. They might be trees. They might be confused bushes. Either way, they're about to become a vital military resource. You spend the next hours hacking at stubborn wood and hauling it up the hill, muttering under your breath and wondering when exactly your life took this turn. You used to worry about cow theft and overdue tithes. Now you're sawing wood in enemy territory under a sky that keeps threatening to rain and laugh at the same time. As you work, your hands blister, your back tightens, and your thoughts wander. What will happen if you breach the walls? Will the city be empty, booby-trapped? Will they welcome you with bread and wine or arrows and fire? One guy says his cousin once tried to sneak into Antioch disguised as a merchant. Got thrown off the wall for his trouble. Or maybe sold into a harem. The details change every time he tells the story, depending on how many figs he's eaten. You finally take a break near dusk. The makeshift tower is starting to resemble something between a siege engine and a playground for very angry beavers. It'll have to do. That night, the commanders gather in a circle of torches. One of them pulls out a crumpled map and lays it on a barrel. You try to peek, but all you see are squiggly lines and 2 arrows labeled. Maybe here. Great. Very reassuring. The bard plays a slower tune tonight. No unicorns. Just a haunting melody that sinks into your chest like fog. You don't recognize it, but it feels familiar. Like mourning something you haven't lost yet. You sleep in fits. The wind howls over the ridge, and somewhere in the night, the alarm bell rings once. Then stops. False alarm, they say. A deer in the wrong place. Or a spy, depending on who you ask. The next morning, it begins. The Crusaders launch their siege on Antioch. You are not in the first wave, but you're close enough to see it. Towers rolling forward, archers loosing arrows, and smoke rising from the walls. The defenders respond with fire, rocks, and what looks suspiciously like old furniture hurled with alarming precision. You duck behind your shield as a flaming crate shatters on a nearby hill. Someone yells for a medic. Another shouts praise to St. George. You can't hear your own thoughts over the chaos. And yet, something stirs in you. Not fear, though there's plenty of that. Not pride, either. Resolve. The sense that you are now part of something that will echo through time. Whether it's triumph or tragedy, you're a thread in the tapestry now, too deep to pull free. You help drag a tower forward, inch by agonizing inch. The wheels are sticky with mud and, disturbingly, some blood. Arrows hiss past your ear. You keep moving. At one point, a Crusader near you shouts that he saw an angel on the wall. His eyes are wild, and there's blood on his face. You're not sure if he's hallucinating or if he's just hopeful. Historians still argue whether the Crusaders experienced visions during the siege. Divine guidance or battlefield delusion. Either way, something drives them forward. By nightfall, the fighting slows. Everyone pulls back, bruised, burned, and breathless. The towers are damaged but not destroyed. The walls remain, though sections are cracked and blackened. It's not over. Not yet. You stagger back to camp and collapse by the fire, your whole body trembling from exhaustion. Your hands are too numb to untie your boots. You leave them on. Someone offers you a hunk of cheese. You eat it like it's a royal feast. No one speaks much that night. The stars feel farther away, and you, oddly, feel closer to them. You wake up to the distant clang of hammers and the unmistakable sound of someone vomiting near your tent. Charming. The scent of smoke hangs thick in the air. A mix of burnt wood, old armor polish, and, if you're not mistaken, slightly overcooked turnip stew. You sit up, blinking through grit in your eyes. Every muscle complains. Loudly. If your legs could file a formal grievance, they would. Your first thought isn't about food or survival or even glory. It's this: the walls of Antioch are still standing. Because they are. Towering, smug, untouched in all the wrong places. Your side made progress yesterday, sure. Some charred outer gates, a few breaches that almost became something, but the main bastions? Still proud, still mocking you with their sheer height and ancient stones. This siege, it's not going to be fast. And that realization spreads through camp like a cold drizzle that soaks you all the way through. Nobody says it out loud, but you can see it in their shoulders, in the way fewer jokes are told at breakfast, in how the priest mutters his prayers just a bit louder than before. Today's orders: dig trenches and reinforce the barricades. Which sounds simple enough until you realize you'll be digging through sun-baked clay with tools better suited for gardening than warfare. You grip your spade, join the line, and begin. Each thrust into the earth is a small act of rebellion against how absurd this whole campaign has become. Not far from you, a knight from Provence is arguing with a local guide. Something about the location of a rumored tunnel beneath the wall. The guide insists it's myth. The knight insists it's divine insight. You're tempted to offer your own opinion, but honestly, you've stopped distinguishing between military strategy and pure wishful thinking. By mid-morning, rumors start circulating. Someone claims that a traitor inside the city is planning to lower a rope ladder from the Tower of the Two Sisters. Another insists that an Armenian merchant smuggled out a map of the sewer system. And a third rumor, perhaps the most colorful, suggests that the moon itself will split the wall at midnight if the right hymn is sung. You hum a few bars of a hymn just in case. Nothing happens. Not even a breeze. Historians still argue whether these rumors were tools of psychological warfare, accidental gossip, or simply the result of too much fermented cabbage. You suspect a blend of all three. The day grinds on. You sharpen stakes. You mend torn canvas. You count your remaining socks, one of which is now mostly whole. Someone nearby spends a full hour trying to convince everyone that drinking boiled nettle water will make you immune to fatigue. You're desperate enough to try it. It does not. Tastes like sadness. As dusk creeps in, you're called to rotate guard duty on the forward line. Close enough to the wall that you can see the watchfires of the defenders, flickering like angry eyes. The city is quiet. Too quiet, like it's holding its breath. You crouch behind a palisade of scavenged doors and fence posts, squinting at the battlements. Nothing moves, but you know they're watching, too. Next to you, a fellow soldier, young, voice still cracking, whispers that he heard someone inside the city cry for help last night. A Christian prisoner, he says, begging us to hurry. You nod slowly. Maybe, or maybe just the wind through shattered windows. Either way, the boy wraps his scarf tighter around his face and doesn't speak again. Later, back in camp, the bard sings a lullaby in Occitan. It's soft, almost a murmur, drifting over the fires. You lay on your back, eyes open, tracing the smoke curling into stars. The lullaby talks about home. Olive trees, old bells, mothers waiting with bread. You've never missed bread more in your life. In the early days, you used to dream about victory. Glory, parades, crowns even. Now your dreams are smaller. A dry bed, unburnt food, a pair of shoes that doesn't squish when you walk. Sleep comes only in pieces, and when it does, it brings strange dreams. You're in the city, but it's empty, silent. Statues weep blood. The streets are lined with bones. In the distance, the same unicorn from a week ago trots past, this time wearing a bishop's hat. You wake up with a start, heart racing. The bard, still awake, gives you a thumbs up from across the fire. Apparently, unicorn bishop dreams are trending. Morning again. The siege drags on. This time, you're sent to collect firewood. You and 3 others trudge into the scrubland under strict orders not to stray too far. One of them hums that lullaby from last night, off-key but sweet. You don't speak much. Too tired. Too wary. As you gather sticks, you find something strange. A tiny shrine carved into a boulder. Faded images. Greek letters. Possibly pre-Christian. Possibly made yesterday. Who knows? You drop a pebble inside, just in case it's the kind of thing that grants wishes or avoids curses. Back at camp, someone has started painting icons onto his shield. Saints, angels, suns with faces. You ask why. He says the paint helps him feel protected. That, and it makes the shield less boring. You can't argue with either. The quartermaster hands out an extra ration of lentils today, and for a brief moment, morale spikes. Lentils, the food of mild excitement. You even overhear someone say, "Maybe this won't be the worst winter ever." You admire his optimism while trying not to choke on your forkful of rock-hard beans. But despite the monotony, something begins to shift. Scouts return with real intel this time. A possible breach forming in the western wall. The engineers get excited, which in Crusade terms means 3 people yell, "Bring the oil!" At the same time, you feel something strange flicker in your chest. Could be hope, could be indigestion. The men work late into the night, reinforcing the siege engines, preparing ladders, whispering prayers into the cold. Someone sneaks off with a bottle of wine, returns 3 hours later with a daisy crown and no explanation. You don't ask, you just smile, then go back to sharpening your blade. Because this siege isn't done with you yet. Not even close. Rain. It starts as a whisper on the canvas above you. Barely there, a gentle tapping. But by the time you sit up and peek outside, it's a downpour. The sky is one endless gray sheet, like someone forgot to color it in. Mud squelches beneath your boots before you've even stood up. Great. Another wet day in paradise. Your tent leaks from 3 different corners, which is technically an improvement from last week, when it leaked from 5. You pull your cloak tighter, try not to think about the smell, because everything smells like damp wool and wet dog now, including you. You trudge toward the fires, where breakfast is mostly rainwater and regret. A pot of watery gruel sits on the coals, bubbling with something that may or may not have once been barley. You slurp it anyway because calories are calories, and you're not above eating sadness soup anymore. Across the camp, someone's mule slips in the mud and collapses with a dramatic flop. A dozen men rush over, not to help the mule, but because they're hoping it's dead and therefore legally edible. It's not. The disappointment is audible. This is what you've become. A cold, muddy husk who gets emotionally invested in mule fatalities. You're assigned to corpse duty today. Don't wince, at this point it's just another chore. The rains have made the shallow graves useless, and the stench wafting through camp is something unholy. You and 3 other lucky souls are tasked with moving the bodies farther out. Some of them are fellow Crusaders. Some aren't. You try not to think too hard about it. Just focus on the shoveling, or the splashing, or how weirdly poetic the ravens look, circling above like little winged tax collectors. The monk from the hospital tent walks past holding a bundle of herbs. "Wormwood," he says with a grin. "Keeps the rot away. Also ghosts. You don't believe in ghosts, but you start stuffing wormwood into your satchel anyway, just in case." Historians still debate how widespread camp diseases were during the First Crusade. Some records suggest up to half of the non-combatant population was wiped out by illness, especially in sieges like Antioch. Others think medieval numbers are overblown, exaggerated to make the survivors seem more heroic. You're not concerned with legacy right now. You're concerned with your boots making that awful squish-squish noise with every step. That and the rats. So many rats. They're getting bolder, running right through tents, stealing bread, gnawing on sleeping fingers. One even dragged off someone's boot in the night. True story. Tonight, you hear a commotion from the other side of camp. A cook swears he saw a rat the size of a cat carrying a sausage in its mouth. Honestly, if the rat paid for it, who are you to judge? You finally catch a few minutes of rest beneath a makeshift lean-to. Rain still drips down your neck. You don't even care anymore. Everything's wet. Your socks, your shirt, your spirit. You sigh, stare at your soggy hands, and imagine what dry feels like. Just once. Maybe in your next life. Someone sneezes violently nearby and doesn't even try to cover it. Nobody reacts. That's how tired you all are. There's a weird, collective acceptance now. A siege-induced zen state where the filth is just part of existence. Like the sky or taxes. A knight nearby is trying to keep his armor polished. He scrubs at it furiously, muttering something about rust being the enemy. You admire his dedication, if not his logic. His squire stands behind him holding an umbrella made from stitched-together chicken skins. It's not working. Still, it's the effort that counts. Later, during evening prayers, you hear something truly disturbing. Laughter. A group of Lombards near the main road is giggling over something. You wander closer, curious. Turns out, they've made a game out of catching raindrops in their mouths while chanting hymns backward. You join them for a few minutes. You lose, but it's the most fun you've had all week. That night, As the fires die down, someone starts telling ghost stories. Apparently, the old monastery outside the city is haunted. A Norman says he saw a figure in the cloister with no face. A Saxon swears a saint appeared in his dreams and warned him not to eat lentils. You lie back on your soaked mat, smile weakly, and wonder if mold can grow in your brain. Sleep comes slow. Your dreams take you through the city walls, through fog, through corridors made of broken swords and whispering stone. There's no blood, just quiet, and somewhere, faintly, the sound of church bells made of bone. You wake up shivering. Your blanket is soaked. So is the earth beneath you. The sky's still weeping, and a strange fungal smell lingers in your nose. You crawl out of your tent, see that a tree has fallen on someone's latrine. Nobody's fixing it. We've moved past maintenance and into survival. As you make your way to the command tent, a soldier stumbles past, drenched and delirious. "They're feeding us soup made of clouds," he yells. Then he trips into a puddle and starts singing. Everyone just walks around him. Your sergeant, looking only slightly more alive than usual, hands you a bucket and points toward the nearest cistern. "Clear the drain," he growls. The drain is clogged with bones. No one knows whose. You dig them out one by one, trying not to think about how they got there. Nearby, the Greek merchant from earlier is selling tiny carved charms. "Protection from plague," he claims. They look like turnips with faces. You buy one anyway, again just in case. You sling your blanket over a bush, hoping it might dry by morning. Spoiler, it won't. The air is so thick with moisture, your lungs feel like they're drowning when you breathe. You rub your arms to fight the chill. It doesn't work. But for a moment, as the rain softens into mist, you close your eyes and imagine home. Dry hearth, warm bread, clean socks. You don't miss battle. You miss boredom. That simple, cozy, bone-deep stillness you never appreciated before. And here you are, on the other side of the world, wet and rotting and ready to trade your sword for a towel. Welcome to the First Crusade. Your hands are still pruny from yesterday's rain when you're woken by a whispered order in your ear. Tonight, wall-scaling detail. Quiet. No good morning. No breakfast. Just that. You groan, roll over, and immediately regret it. Your back feels like it's been used as a battering ram, which, considering how you slept, isn't far off. But there's no time for complaint. You've been chosen for one of the worst jobs in the entire siege. Night infiltration. You've heard stories. Most of them end with, "and then he screamed and fell." The plan is simple because complicated ones never survive mud and torchlight. Your unit will approach the enemy walls under cover of darkness, scale them with ladders, and try not to die. You nod along like you understand. Secretly, you're already rehearsing your false scream. As evening sets in, the mood shifts. The camp feels tighter, like the air's been vacuumed out. Everyone moves a little more deliberately. There's less joking, less spitting. Even the usual brawling over soup portions has been downgraded to polite glaring. You gear up slowly. Mail shirt, belt knife, rope, ladder hook. The leather creaks with every movement. Too loud, you think. Everything feels too loud. Your heartbeat, your breath, the squish of your damp boots. The knight leading your group gives a tiny, unconvincing speech about glory and destiny. He also has spinach in his teeth. This does not fill you with confidence. As night falls, you crouch in the shadows near the base of the outer wall. The city looms above you, just a jagged silhouette against a cloud-swollen sky. Torches flicker atop the ramparts. Shadows move. You whisper a prayer, but mostly for balance. The ladder is pushed up against the stone with a thunk that seems to echo for miles. You're the fourth one up. The rungs are slick with rain. The ladder wobbles like it's second-guessing this whole enterprise. Halfway up, you realize the guy below you smells like turnip stew and defeat. You keep climbing. At the top, you peek over. Nothing. Just shadows. And, was that a sneeze? You freeze. The noise came from below you. You look down and see someone halfway up the ladder with a panicked look. Mid-sneeze. They try to hold it in. Fail. It echoes like a trumpet. Immediately, the world explodes. Shouts in a language you don't understand. Arrows start whizzing. One hits the ladder just below your foot. Someone screams. Not you, surprisingly. A bell rings from within the city. Well, so much for stealth. You scramble over the wall, landing awkwardly in a pile of gravel and possibly cabbage. You look around. None of your squad mates are with you. You're alone, and upside down. You rolled into an abandoned cart and are now partially wedged under it. You wiggle out with as much dignity as possible, which is none, and crouch behind a barrel. Footsteps approach. You hold your breath. It's a guard. He pauses near your hiding spot. You consider attacking him, but your sword is stuck in your scabbard, water-swollen leather. You settle for prayer again. He moves on. You exhale hard enough to qualify as a whistle. Historians still argue whether the Crusaders used formal infiltration tactics or mostly relied on surprise and chaos. Judging by your experience, the answer is mostly chaos. You spot movement ahead. One of your own. You wave. They wave back. You both run silently toward each other, only to realize too late you've both drawn swords. You freeze mid-charge. There's a tense pause. Then, awkward laughter. Nice landing. The other soldier whispers, pointing at your mud-covered face. You should have seen me sneeze, you reply. Together, you creep through an alley. Dogs bark in the distance. A door creaks open and shuts again before you can see who was behind it. Every sound feels amplified. Somewhere a baby cries. Somewhere else, someone's singing an off-key hymn. You duck behind a stack of crates. The smell hits you instantly. Fish. Lots of it. Possibly deceased for several days. The scent practically grabs your nose and slaps it. A city at night is nothing like you imagined. It's not all torches and tension. It's oddly alive. Quiet conversations drift from windows. A cat sprints across your path and vanishes like a ghost. Laundry flaps above your head like surrender flags. Then movement. Patrol. You press yourself into the shadows. They pass, oblivious. You resist the urge to cough. The fish smell is doing unspeakable things to your sinuses. You make it to the inner courtyard where you were supposed to meet the rest of the infiltration team. No one's there. Naturally. You and your fish-scented comrade wait in silence. Finally, another figure approaches. It's the monk from earlier, barefoot and clutching a frying pan. Apparently, he took a wrong turn near the latrines and ended up scaling the wall by accident. Now you're a team of 3, you, Sneezing Steve, and the frying pan friar. Together, you attempt to locate your objective, a gate lever meant to open the city from within. At least, that's what the plan was. You're not even sure which gate anymore. And the monk keeps trying to convert cats. You finally find the mechanism. It looks complicated. Like, you should study geometry complicated. Sneezing Steve stares at it. We pull this. You shrug. Maybe don't sneeze while doing it. You pull. Creaks. Then cracks. Then something snaps, and the gate below creaks open an inch. Good enough. Outside, the main army is waiting. Trumpets blare. Torches appear. Someone yells now, which feels optimistic. You retreat from the mechanism and rush to rejoin the others. The battle is coming. You've done your part. Your knees are shaking. Your hands are black with city grime. You've got fish scales on your cloak and no idea how. But the gate is open. And for one ridiculous moment you grin. Because you lived. The sun rises on a different city. The walls you scaled last night are now crawling with Crusaders. Flags flap from parapets. Red crosses on white fields, dirt-streaked and half-torn, but flying proudly all the same. Smoke drifts upward in lazy curls from dozens of fires. And the gate, the one you pried open with trembling hands and dumb luck, now stands wide. The city has fallen. You're still not sure what victory is supposed to feel like, but this isn't quite it. You stand in the main square, or what used to be one. It's hard to tell with the overturned carts, broken shutters, and piles of rubble. A bakery smolders in one corner, its bread ovens still glowing with embers. There's a wheel of cheese sitting in the street. You think about taking it but decide against it, mostly because it's being guarded by a goose with murder in its eyes. Your comrades wander the streets like ghosts. Some cheer, some weep, Some just slump against walls, stunned. A boy no older than 13 walks by with a sword twice his size and the expression of someone who's already seen too much. This is what you fought for. You remind yourself of that, over and over. But instead of divine light or heavenly choruses, you're greeted by the smell of smoke, sweat, and broken promises. The spoils of war are meager, and many are already claimed. One knight drags a mirror through the street, shattered and splattered. Another proudly shows off a bent helmet he found. You spot a monk hugging a live chicken, declaring it a sign from heaven. Victory apparently comes with poultry. You pick your way through the streets, stepping over fallen beams and the occasional discarded sandal. Some buildings still burn. One soldier tries to salvage books from a collapsing library. He tosses out a few volumes, some in Arabic, some Latin, one that may or may not be about gardening. Historians still argue whether the Crusaders preserved or destroyed more than they gained in these early victories. The answer, as always, depends on who you ask and whether they're standing next to the guy with the flaming torch. You reunite with your unit near a dry fountain. Someone's drawn a crude smiley face in the dust on its rim. The water's long gone, of course. Water's always the first to vanish. That and dignity. A sergeant distributes rations, mostly moldy biscuits and something that might have once been lentils. You chew slowly, like someone pretending to enjoy a fancy meal. So, the Flemish soldier says beside you, mouth full of biscuit dust, "This is the Holy Land, huh?" You glance around. "Not yet." He shrugs. "Close enough." A trumpet sounds from the far end of the square. Your commander appears, face like stone, armor scraped and dented. He's lost his helmet and has tied a rag around his head like a bandit or a drunken uncle. He raises his arms. Everyone quiets down. "We've taken the city," he says, voice hoarse. "But we don't stay." Groans ripple through the group. Even the goose lets out an angry squawk. "We move by midday," he adds. "Loot if you must. Pray if you can. But don't waste daylight." And just like that, the spell breaks. Soldiers scatter again. Some to grab what they can, others to seek shelter. A few just to find a quiet spot to throw up. Because yeah, that happens too. You wander back toward the bakery, hoping the fire's out and maybe there's something edible left inside. The walls are blackened. The roof's gone. But in one corner, beneath a fallen beam, is a tray of scorched but mostly intact flatbreads. You hesitate, then you take one, and eat it standing there, surrounded by ash, like it's the best thing you've ever tasted. And honestly, kind of is. A group of children runs past, laughing. Locals. One of them is barefoot. Another carries a stick like a sword. They don't seem afraid, just curious. They stop when they see you wide-eyed. You raise your bread in a salute. They burst into giggles and run off again. Maybe they don't know what's happened. Maybe they do and they've already moved on. Either way, they remind you, for the first time in weeks, that life still exists outside armor and orders. You sit on the bakery's edge, chewing slowly, watching the smoke drift lazily into the brightening sky. The sun feels warmer now, or maybe that's just exhaustion settling into your bones. God wills it. Someone mutters nearby, probably out of habit. You glance at them. He's young, beardless, holding a rusty sword like it's a newborn. His eyes are red. You nod once, not because you agree, but because you're too tired to argue. There's a strange camaraderie now. You and your fellow soldiers have shared something awful, stupid, brave. You've survived together. Even Sneezing Steve, who now has a heroic nickname that makes him weirdly proud. You think about writing a letter home, but your ink's frozen and your hands are shaking. Maybe tomorrow. As midday approaches, the square begins to empty. Units regroup, supplies are gathered, wounded are loaded onto carts. You help hoist a fellow soldier onto a donkey cart. He's missing a boot and humming a hymn. You don't recognize the tune. You pass the goose again, still guarding the cheese. Some things apparently are eternal. At the gate, you pause. One last glance at the city, this accidental fortress, this half-dreamed reward. It doesn't feel like victory, but it feels done. For now, you step out onto the road again, shield strapped to your back, bread crust in your pocket. Your legs ache, your shoulders scream, your heart feels like it's taken a few arrows too. But the crusade continues, and so do you. You move on. Again, as always, the dust from the city still clings to your cloak, and ash lingers in your nostrils like a memory that refuses to blow away. The road ahead is no less cruel than the one behind. Rutted, pitted, sun-blasted, a long and crooked vein carved into the wilderness, bleeding armies eastward. The air hangs heavy with the scent of horse sweat and old leather, and the usual soundtrack. Boots scraping, armor jangling, men coughing. Plays on repeat like the world's most depressing lullaby. Someone jokes, weakly, that after all this, heaven better have foot massages. You laugh, a little too loudly. The terrain begins to rise again. You're heading toward mountains now, jagged and aloof, like giants lying sideways, daring you to cross their ribs. The slope's gradual at first, but cruel in its persistence. The path narrows. Trees become scarce. Shade becomes currency. By midday, your tunic is soaked through. You can't remember the last time you weren't thirsty, or the last time your feet didn't feel like punishment, or the last time someone didn't shout, "Hold formation," as if that ever actually helped. The thing about marching like this hour after hour, mile after mile, is that you start to hallucinate. Not dragons or angels, but stranger things, hot baths, your mother's bread, your sister's laugh, that dog you once saw eat a candle and just carry on like nothing happened. You blink. Ahead, a small stream cuts through the rocks. Not much, barely a trickle, but enough to gather around, bend down, and pretend you're civilized again. The water's freezing. You splash it on your face anyway, relishing the shock. Someone fills a canteen and drops it immediately, yelping. "It bit me." Didn't. Probably. Further up the trail, a scout reports spotting locals. Not soldiers, just goatherds and a few thin dogs. Still, your commander tightens ranks. No surprises. Not again. Historians still argue whether this part of the route, skirting the mountains of what's now southeastern Turkey, was strategic genius or logistical disaster. Looking at the crooked path ahead, you'd vote for emotional sabotage. You pass a shrine carved into the rock. Faded paintings, some saint probably. No one stops. You wonder if anyone even notices it anymore. An hour later, you stumble into a campsite from a previous unit. Tents flattened, bones scattered, bits of burnt cloth clinging to twigs. Someone swears they saw movement in the trees. Everyone grabs their spears tighter. Then a rabbit hops into view, completely unbothered. False alarm. There's talk tonight around the fire of the next leg, through a stretch known as the Iron Pass. The name alone sends shivers. Narrow, winding, easy to ambush. Every story involves blood and screaming, and a knight who allegedly screamed louder than his horse. You sit quietly, sharpening a dull blade, half listening. There's something soothing about routine even now. Metal on stone, sparks dancing, men snoring in stereo. You pull out that crust of bread from 2 cities ago and nibble at it like a mouse. Tastes like memory and dust. Still, you savor it. Tomorrow will be worse. That's what they say. Every night ends with someone muttering, "Tomorrow will be worse," and they're usually right. Morning. Mist clings low like a suspicious blanket. Visibility's poor. Everything smells like wet wool. The pass begins. You enter single file, shoulder to shoulder with cliffs and silence. The trail's barely wide enough for 2 men to pass without falling into theological debate, or an actual ravine. You glance down once. Mist swallows the drop. That's enough of that. "Don't look down," someone says behind you. "Thanks. Super helpful." A raven caws overhead. You try not to read into it. You fail. Halfway through the pass, you spot old armor rusting in a crevice. Abandoned? Lost? Retrieved by no one? You pretend not to notice it. Keep walking. Tensions rise. Every clatter of stone sends men flinching. One knight swears he hears whispers on the wind. He blames spirits. Someone else blames dehydration. Both seem plausible. Your unit stops briefly in a hollowed-out cave along the path. There's graffiti scratched into the walls, crude crosses, a date, what might be a fish or a really bad goat. You touch one of the marks, imagining the hand that made it. Dead now, surely, but not forgotten. Not entirely. You sleep there, curled against stone. The cave is cold and unforgiving, but quiet. For once, quiet. In the night, you dream of a feast. Not heaven, not glory, just a table. Real food, a bed, no sand, no orders. And waking doesn't feel too cruel. The next morning, light breaks across the mountains in pale gold streaks. For a moment, just a moment, it's beautiful. You catch your breath, even as your breath catches in the cold air. One soldier tries to take a painting of it with words. He says, "If I survive this, I'm becoming a poet." You tell him he'd better get better at rhyming. He smirks. "Just trying to remember something good." Yeah. That's what you're all doing now, isn't it? Remembering, hoping, dragging memories like armor. The Iron Pass ends by afternoon. The trail flattens. The trees return. A bird sings. You almost forget how to feel about that. You pass a ruined fort. A square of broken stone and moss. Your commander says nothing about it, just waves the unit forward. You linger a second longer. Someone, long ago, built this place believing it would last. Now, it's just a rest stop on someone else's map. You keep walking. The city of Myrat is just days away now. You've heard rumors, grain stores, wells, trouble. There's always trouble. But that's a problem for another day. Today, you've survived again. And that, for now, is enough. The land begins to slope downward now, as if the world itself is finally exhaling after weeks of tension. You welcome the easier descent, but your knees complain anyway. They've become old before their time, just like the rest of you. You barely recognize yourself when you catch a glimpse of your reflection in a puddle. Sun darkened, beard patchy, eyes tired. If your mother saw you, she'd probably cry or worse, try to wash your face with spit and a scrap of cloth. You shake the thought. Focus. The road bends toward the plains. The soil here is richer, darker, and your boots finally stop kicking up quite so much dust. Somewhere in the distance, someone claims they see a city. It's not Jerusalem yet. No, that's still hundreds of miles off, but it's the next waypoint, and anything with roofs and walls counts as progress. A group of fellow soldiers starts listing everything they'll do when they reach the holy city. One wants to build a church. Another says he'll finally marry the girl who waited for him. You're not sure anymore. The dream has changed. It's quieter now, more practical. A bed, a meal, a morning without orders. You're pulled out of your thoughts when a rider gallops up, bearing a crude charcoal map drawn on a scrap of goat hide. He points south, explaining that scouts have found a safer trail that avoids the upcoming ravines. Your commander agrees with a grunt, though no one trusts maps anymore. Not since that one monk led an entire battalion into a swamp that turned out to be a lake. Still, you follow. The terrain gets stranger. Cracked earth here, tufts of wild grass there. The odd olive tree twisting like it's trying to escape the sky. You pass what must have once been a village. Empty, roofless, full of broken clay pots and lizards with attitude. A tattered banner flaps from a leaning pole. No one recognizes the symbol. No one wants to. Somewhere in the mess, you notice a single boot lying sideways in the road. Just one. As if someone got halfway to where they were going and decided to finish barefoot. You don't pick it up. That feels like bad luck. By now, your group is smaller than when you began. Much smaller. Sickness, skirmishes, desertion. Each mile shed more of you like old skin. The ones who remain don't talk much. When they do, it's low and brief. A warning, a joke, prayer. Sometimes all three. The night before reaching Myrat, you find shelter under an outcropping of rock. The wind picks up dry, bitter, uninvited. You wrap your cloak tighter and listen to it howl. Someone nearby plays a lute badly, strumming out the same 3 notes until the strings finally snap. Sleep comes fitfully. Your dreams are cluttered. Home, fire, a cup of cold milk. The strange face of a bishop who once blessed your helmet and then promptly forgot your name. Historians still argue whether the atrocities that followed at Myrat were driven by desperation or madness. Or both. The truth is harder to pin down when hunger gnaws louder than morals. But you wouldn't know the worst of it until later. For now, you just see the walls of the city in the distance, silhouetted in the pale dawn light. They look smaller than you expected. As your unit prepares to approach, your commander gathers everyone. He speaks plainly. Rations are low. Spirits are lower. Reinforcements are weeks behind. You may be the only force available for the assault. You take out the charcoal stub you've been saving, the one you use to scratch notes and prayers into whatever scrap you can find. Today, you use it to write your will, just in case. It's short. If I don't make it, give what's left to my sister. If there's nothing left, tell her I tried. You pause, then add a line. Tell her I missed the bread, even the stale stuff. You fold the note and tuck it under your belt. It's not much, but it's something. The air thickens as the sun rises, casting long shadows from the broken stones ahead. Men move into position. Arrows are counted. Shields checked. A priest murmurs a blessing that no one fully hears. You look up at the sky. It's blue. Just blue. No signs. No fire. No angels. Then someone shouts. The charge begins. And just like that, you're running again. Forward into the dust, the chaos, the promise of something better, or at least something different. You don't think. You just move. Later, you'll barely remember the details. A flash of a blade. The thud of a battering ram. The awful silence right before the gate cracked open. And then it's over. Or at least this part. You're alive. Again. Somehow. The road south begins the next day. You're limping now. Everyone is. But your eyes stay locked on the horizon. Jerusalem. It still feels like a word from a song you barely remember. But now it's more than myth. Now it's a destination. Someone hands you a heel of bread. You bite into it and smile. Stale. But it tastes like hope. The stars are high now, scattered across the sky like tiny fires in a great dark plain. You lie still beneath them, cloak drawn to your chin, the hard ground cradling your back like a worn wooden bed you've known forever. The world has gone quiet. No marching boots, no clashing steel, not even the crackle of a fire. Just the low hum of distant wind slipping through stone and sand. You exhale slowly. Each breath feels softer, like it's wrapped in wool. Your limbs, once coiled tight from weeks of movement and muscle strain, begin to settle. There's a warmth blooming somewhere inside, not from fire or food, but from knowing you've come this far, survived this much, endured the weight of history, even as it pressed heavy on your chest like chainmail. The road ahead still exists, but not tonight. Tonight, there are no battles to fight, no orders to follow, no mud to trudge through. Just you, just the hum of your heart, just the simple rhythm of being still, of being quiet, of finally letting go. Maybe tomorrow there will be more cities, more decisions, more consequences. But tonight there's peace. Maybe not in the world, but in your body, your breath, your bones. So close your eyes. Let the stars fade behind your eyelids. Let the wind soften to a whisper. Let the echoes of marching men and distant drums dissolve into dreams. You've made it, soldier. You're safe now. Sleep deeply. Rest fully. And we'll meet again. In another time, another tale.